You've heard of the dark web. Maybe you've seen it mentioned in a news story about hackers or a documentary about cybercrime. Maybe someone told you your data ends up there after a breach. Maybe you've just assumed it's a hidden corner of the internet where terrible things happen and criminals rule. Most of what you've been told is wrong. The dark web is real, the crimes are real, but the version of it that lives in most people's heads, a vast, lawless underworld where anything can be bought and hitmen are one click away, that version is mostly fiction. And the gap between the myth and the reality matters because buried inside that gap is a risk that's actually relevant to you. Let's start with what it actually is. The internet you use every day, social media, news sites, streaming platforms, email, represents only a fraction of what exists online. Search engines like Google index what's called the surface web. Below that is the deep web, private databases, medical records, banking portals, corporate intranets. None of that is accessible through a search engine, but none of it is sinister. It's just private. The dark web is a specific, much smaller section of the deep web. To access it, you need specialized software, most commonly a browser called Tor, which stands for the Onion Router. Tor works by encrypting your traffic and routing it through a series of volunteer-operated servers around the world, making it extremely difficult to trace where data is coming from and where it's going. Websites on the dark web use .onion addresses, long, randomized strings of characters that don't resolve through a normal browser. This might actually sound like something only criminals would build, but Tor was actually developed by the United States Naval Research Laboratory in the mid-1990s for the purpose of protecting government communications. The same anonymity that makes it appealing to bad actors also makes it essential for journalists, whistleblowers, political dissidents, and anyone living under a repressive government. In countries where the internet is heavily censored, Tor is how people access uncensored news. It's how sources communicate securely with reporters. It's how human rights organizations operate in dangerous environments. The tool itself is neutral. What people do with it is not. Research conducted by Gareth Owen at the University of Portsmouth found something that surprised a lot of people. Despite the dark web's reputation, the majority of actual traffic to dark websites goes to legitimate or privacy-focused destinations, not criminal marketplaces. The criminal sites exist, but they are far fewer and far less visited than most people assume. That said, the criminal activity that does exist is real. In 2011, a marketplace called Silk Road launched on the dark web. It was essentially an Amazon for illegal drugs, a fully functional e-commerce site with product listings, customer reviews, and a dispute resolution system. It operated openly for 2 years, processing hundreds of millions of dollars in transactions. Its founder, Ross Ulbricht, built something so sophisticated that federal investigators spent years trying to dismantle it. When they finally did, in 2013, they seized over 170,000 Bitcoin and shut down a platform that had become the most famous example of dark web commerce in history. Silk Road wasn't an anomaly. Similar marketplaces have launched and been shut down dozens of times since. Stolen credit card numbers, login credentials, personal identity information. These things are routinely bought and sold on dark web forums. The data that gets stolen in corporate breaches doesn't just disappear. It moves, it gets packaged, repriced, and sold to whoever wants it. And here's where this becomes relevant to you personally. You probably haven't accessed the dark web. You probably have no interest in doing so. But your information might already be there. Not because you did anything wrong, because a company you trusted got breached, and the credentials you handed over, your email address, your password, sometimes your home address or phone number, ended up on the market. This channel covers what most people never think to protect. If you want to keep knowing what most people don't, subscribe. That's what this channel is here for. Troy Hunt, a security researcher and Microsoft MVP who runs the website Have I Been Pwned, has cataloged over 12 billion compromised accounts from known data breaches. You can go to that site right now, type in your email address, and find out whether your credentials have appeared in any breach that's been publicly disclosed. It takes 30 seconds. Most people who try it find at least one match. Many find a dozen or even more. If your credentials have been exposed, the risk isn't that a hacker is sitting on the dark web specifically targeting you. The risk is automated. Software takes stolen username and password combinations and tries them across hundreds of services. If you reuse passwords, that one breach becomes a key that opens multiple doors. So what can you do? Start with Have I Been Pwned. Check every email address you use. If any of them appear in a breach, change the passwords on every account tied to that email, prioritizing banking, your primary email account, and anything connected to your financial life. Use a password manager to generate unique passwords for each service so that the next breach doesn't cascade. Enable two-factor authentication on anything that matters. And understand what the dark web actually is. You are extremely unlikely to stumble onto it by accident. You cannot access it through a normal browser. Nobody is going to drag you into it without your knowledge. The real danger is much quieter. Your information, somewhere you've never been, being passed between people you'll never see. You've heard of the dark web. You imagine something terrifying and distant, a world you'd never touch. The truth is, it might already have information about you, and the question isn't how to avoid the dark web. It's what you're going to do about what's already there.